Welcome to Fan4Racing Radio. I am Fan4Racing Sharon. We also have Jay Huseman and Chris Crichton in the house. And we are here to talk about our hot topic sound off for tonight, episode 2516. Injunction, Dodge, and Challenge are the top three topics here for tonight. So, Chris, where do you want to start?
I guess probably the biggest news of the week, and that's Dodge. Well, Ram is coming back to the sport.
Ooh, Jay's happy that you went there. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, it certainly is. I know it's been rumored for a while, and I was trying to not get too excited because that's what it had been for many, many years, was just that rumor. I'm glad to see it. I'm excited for it. Next comes what teams and drivers are involved in it, but also then I think what it leads to as far as they said possibly a 2026 in the Cup or in the trucks, and then a Cup Series in 2027. That'd be awful aggressive. I think it was Bob Pockris that posted that. That would be an aggressive layout and return to the sport. So again, I don't want to get too far ahead of them or my hopes up too high, but I am absolutely thrilled to see them back in the Truck Series. And even if they only stay in the Truck Series, the Ram, I think, is one that is a very vital part when it comes to American trucks. So I'm excited for it. And more competition, I always like that.
Well, I guess there's some of us that remember Dodge being in NASCAR at one point. They left in 2007, and now they are returning in the Truck Series with an intention of perhaps going into the Cup Series the following year. They won't be racing in the Truck Series until 2026. So I would anticipate it would probably be 2027 before we would see them in the Cup Series. And they have stated that they want to see how it goes with the Truck Series. They have certain benchmarks that they're looking for before they make their final decision on moving into the Cup Series. Now, I will say this. I've been seeing some rumors that there might be other manufacturers that may be in the wings as well. So there might be other news forthcoming as well. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be great. We've had some great drivers in Dodge with Casey Kane, Jeremy Mayfield, and some others. I think Bill Elliott was a Dodge driver at one point as well. So we'll see what happens next year with Dodge and the Ram trucks in the Truck Series next season. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, correction, they left the sport in 2012. That you said 2007, so they were in for about 5 more years. It's the leap of faith, correct? I mean, this is, of course, Dodge has been a part of NASCAR before. They already have the V8 engine laid out, so they don't have to create something. They can basically pick up the notes where they left off. But what this is a leap of faith for other manufacturers to say, well, wait a minute. If Dodge can do it, then we can too, and we can get into this. And I think that that's exactly what the sport needed. They needed a commitment, to see Dodge come in with the Truck Series is similar remnants of what Toyota did. I believe Toyota come into the sport before they went Cup racing. They were in the Truck Series there for 2 or 3 years. I can vaguely remember a Darrell Waltrip commercial, who I believe owned a truck at the time, and that was kind of the introduction to Toyota into NASCAR. So this route's been taken. As you said, Ms. Sharon, I have heard rumors that there is another manufacturer, Honda maybe. But we've been hearing these rumors for so very long. Hopefully what this does is it steamrolls into other manufacturers saying, you know what, now is the time to buy in. We are worried about 4 charters being added for one manufacturer. that would put us at a 40-car field. But it wasn't very long ago, guys, that we were racing 43 cars. So technically, we have enough room for at least 7 more charters to be created for new manufacturers, not counting, I guess, the discussion that we'll have later on here tonight about charters and a certain said lawsuit. But I'm not going to start that torch yet. I'll pass it on to you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks. Dump. Yeah, sticking with the manufacturer story, but that's a great tie-in. I guess that'll be our next topic. Again, you're right. It's leading that way. The Dodge one, or Ram, has been a rumor a lot longer than what the Honda one is. But from what I'm seeing from some high up executives within NASCAR, it is that they're getting really close. You know, we've heard it before, that they said it's in talks or in works or whatever. It sounds like it is really far advanced, I think is the term that gets used. So waiting to see on that. And again, I got absolutely no problem with it. And you're right, Toyota came in with the Tundra. It was Rich Bickle in the number 17 for Darrell Waltrip Racing. That was one of the first trucks. And then Michael Waltrip Racing, that was a Toyota team to kick off their Cup Series debut before they moved in with Joe Gibbs Racing. So we'll see what, just to start with, we got to take for what it is. The Ram is coming to the Truck Series, and I am excited about that. I hadn't heard from Tommy. I meant to message him, and I forgot. A fellow Dodge fan. So we'll see how it goes. And like I said, that one being that it was rumored, and I know they said that it kind of got leaked already Friday night before Saturday night during the truck race, versus the grand announcement on Sunday morning. But like I said, it was heavily rumored prior to that anyway. You know, that next step is the teams and the drivers. When it comes to the Cup side, Chris, you brought up a good point I hadn't really thought about. We'll talk about the charters when it comes to the other topic.
Yes, indeed. And I'm like you. I'm hearing that there is some strength behind some of these rumors, in that they are in conversations. They are close to making decisions. And it sounds as though we may hear some announcement in the coming months. I'm not going to say days or even weeks. I think it's perhaps in the coming months. But that clock is ticking, because if they're going to come in 2026, I would say that we probably will know by about September or October at the very latest. Because people need to start making plans for that 2026 season, if that's the season that they're going to come in. So I think that I think I've got strong feelings about it. I think that it is, when I say strong feelings, I'm saying that I have a good feeling that it is going to happen. So we'll see. Time always has a way of telling the rest of the story. So we'll see what transpires as time marches on here. Chris?
Yeah, I do want to say, I don't know. It seems like this was forever drawn out, because we've had rumors upon rumors upon rumors. But in all actuality, Dodge did a great job at keeping it a secret, because it's not like we had an influx of rumors before we actually knew what was going to happen, right? This is several weeks old. That's how long it took for this to really come out. They already had a truck design. They already had the front grille designed for this truck. So be it, they did play the old rumor mill, the old speculation that there was another manufacturer coming in. And look, that's a lot of people to keep quiet when you're designing nose pieces and whatnot for a Craftsman truck. So I give it to Dodge and what's the actual, what are they calling themselves? I'm a car guy.
Stellantis?
Stellantis, yes. Okay, Stellantis. I'm not used to calling them that at all. I'm the Chrysler Daimler generation. So
right.
I definitely, I'm glad that things come about as quickly as they did, and we're left now to wonder if maybe some of these other speculations are if there's any validation to those as well.
Okay, Jay.
Well, I wish I could even give some speculation as to who the truck side's going to be. If we're getting into the Cup Series and a manufacturer, I know Andretti's name came up both with Dodge as well as Honda, because there you are looking at maybe a connection to some of these teams that also run in the IndyCar Series. And ironically, if you think about it, it was Team Penske that was Dodge, got their last championship on the way out the door with Brad Keselowski. So, right now they seem to be pretty strong with Ford, but you never know. We've seen it in the past. Joe Gibbs Racing was all Chevrolet until they went Toyota. Stewart-Haas Racing went Chevy to Ford. We've seen some bombshells of that before.
Yep.
Personally, there again, I back in the day when it was Ray Everham left Hendrick Motorsports, I was kind of hoping Gordon would go with him and it would be Gordon and Dodge together with Ray Everham. But I don't see, even going back there, though, of Rick Hendrick has ties to Honda, if you think about it, going back to his car dealerships, right? I mean, that was when that one first started that. Yeah, we know what they've built and worked with through Chevrolet, but he has ties to Honda. So it's not like it's a out of the blue or possibility, It's one of those two, money talks, So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I have heard a rumor that one of the people that's being considered for a Dodge in the Truck Series is Cletus McFarlane. Garrett.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's the one that I've heard most often his name come up as a potential Dodge driver for next season. So we'll see. He's racing in the Arkham and Art Series right now. But I would not be surprised if people don't do a wait and see what happens with Dodge before they jump in the pool, perhaps, too. So we might see them coming in, another manufacturer coming in maybe in the 2027 season. I think it would be great if they make the announcement in time that they can come in 2026, but the possibility does exist for it to be another year.
So let's go back 2012. Brad Keselowski wins the championship. Dodge steps out of racing. Penske at that point in time had a motor department that he closed. Penske was building Dodge motors. Penske no longer builds motors. Those motors are Roush Yates motors.
Yep.
So Penske, talk about a good fit. First of all, with Dodge, with Ram, we're not going to have to worry about a motor for the first, for Truck Series. They race the Ilmar motor, so it's going to be, a one. Everybody runs the same motor in the Truck Series, so that gives it a couple of years. And Penske's never been afraid to jump ship. I don't want to sit here and speculate. It's Dave Moody says it's no fun to do that, but I beg to differ. But what I do want to point out is the obvious. Penske had a motor department. They closed it down. That building has stayed vacant. With all the parts needed to build these Dodge motors, Penske has not had the need to build motors because he's been racing Roush Yates motors. So Penske is your number one go-to if you're going to reestablish a Cup Series team, because whatever team you go to has to be in the business of building motors unless NASCAR Cup Series adopts this Ilmar type motor, and I just do not see that. That's the only control manufacturers have left in the Cup Series, and so I really just don't see that happening. We will be listening to the rumor mills because Penske's name will be mentioned a lot for the next couple of years if, for chance, Dodge decides to return back to the Cup Series.
Well, I will kind of put another speculation out there. If a new team comes in, that new team, if it's somebody like Andretti, and I don't know that it's Andretti, I'm just speculating, but if it's somebody like Andretti, maybe they would open their own engine building operation. So
Well,
that's a possibility as well.
And I don't mean to step in here, but the one major problem with Andretti right now, they're building a Class 1 facility right next to Hendrick Motorsports with the name Cadillac out front because they are
Gotcha.
into Formula 1 racing. So I doubt very seriously Andretti's going to jump ship. Waiting this long to get into Formula 1. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just throwing the name out there. It could be any team.
It could be. It could be Gibbs, for crying out loud. I mean, wouldn't that be crazy? Gibbs has been known. He's dumped one manufacturer before. Of course, Joe Gibbs's race team was R&D research team that he bought from Hendrick Motorsports. So, and then the rest is history. Now he's a Toyota magnet.
Yep. Jay, I know you're biting at the bit.
Well, no, the funny thing there is Andretti's name actually has been kind of tied to several, starting with Dodge and then Honda. You mentioned Cadillac, and again, that one's an out there possibility of a manufacturer. It's not been as strong as what the Honda one has. But also that's where the ties with Gamebridge, which goes to Spire Motorsports. So you talk about that, of them being part of that team, of if it's an already established team. We're talking about a new team. The Truck Series most likely will be a new team, but there are some, we've seen that before, of that it's just a team that switches over. So when you look at the Cup side, especially for a team like, say, Spire Motorsports, where they are on the Chevrolet pecking order, as they like to call it, of full factory support. And it starts at the top with Hendrick Motorsports. That's why Stewart-Haas Racing went to Ford, because when they went, they were the top dog to begin with. For whatever reason, they got backed ahead of Penske. Now it would be Penske when you talk about Ford. And that was part of, I think, Stewart-Haas's struggle. But so we got to look at that too. It may not necessarily be a new team coming in to do this. It may be that they get one of these, even for right. And Spire kind of fits that mold. That's one of those what ifs. Chris mentioned it. I know Moody's stance on that. And Sharon knows it's not very often I'll disagree with Moody. I don't mind the what if. The problem is some of the callers that call in, I mean, it's not just a what if, it's like way out of left field. You know, if something is a possibility, I don't mind discussing it. But, again, like I said, you could go on for hours with that. So I understand why he tries to avoid that, because there really is unlimited possibilities. And if you listen to Sirius XM, any of the radio shows, you can get some out there calls. I've been on there a few times. I'm not saying all mine are on point either, but.
Okay. I think we've been around the horn twice.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to our next hot topic. What's it going to be, Jay?
Well, Chris tied it in there again. This is if a manufacturer comes in, especially as a new team, reference the charters. Well, Chris said that they'd have to expand it beyond 36. Right now, with the latest lawsuit update, that whatever court district, I don't have it, Sharon, if you have that, of the ruling on 2311 being allowed to run as charter teams has been overturned. Now we're waiting on to see if 2311 appeals that. And at this point in the game of where they're at and the stance they've taken, I don't know why they wouldn't. I think it's like 2 to 3 more weeks that they have to respond. If not, and I'm trying to find a calendar here, the EchoPark race or Atlanta race would be the deadline. If they have not, and they no longer are chartered teams, Atlanta, I think, is where they would have to start running as open teams. Now, a couple things that means is, A, they don't get as much money. B, if necessary, they would have to qualify their way in. Now, Chris, you mentioned it. We haven't seen that, but except at like Daytona, I don't even remember where else where the Cup Series has had a full 40-car field anymore. Would they, with more manufacturers coming in, or possible, would they look at expanding back to 43 spots? That's a good possibility, because the reason they cut back on it was they weren't filling it with quality racing teams anyway. With 43 cars, you had several, at that time they were called starting parks, and NASCAR didn't find that as a favorable image. Understood it with the business model the way it was, that there were teams that were doing it and they weren't wrong because it was allowed. NASCAR tried to eliminate that by shrinking the field. When they went to the charters, that affected a big deal of them, because some of them then, even if they had the charter but were a non-competitive team, they were selling off their charters and getting out. We saw several. We could go down a list of that. There's still one out there that's going through some of that with Rick Ware Racing, and the leased charter to Roush Fenway Keselowski, and supposedly been sold to Legacy Motor Club, and that's a whole nother lawsuit. And I don't want to talk about lawsuits anymore, so I'm going to let Sharon talk.
I was just looking up, going back in my notes here to see if I could find that information that you were looking for, Jay. You bring up an interesting thought here with regard to I don't know. Honda said in a written statement Thursday that it has many concerns, among them the relatively high overall cost to participate as an engine supplier and the potential or perceived or real conflict of interest which may exist with Penske ownership. That might relate to IndyCar, though. So, okay, and I know I'm covering a lot of things here, but Adam Stern reported YouTube star and ARCA driver Cletus McFarlane could get involved with the prospective new NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team from Stellantis Ram Trucks brand, should the automaker complete talks to enter the sport. So his name is definitely on that list. And I'm still going back to see if I can get the information that you were asking for. But let me just get to, and I'll continue to look when I'm not speaking. But I think that if we were to bring more than one manufacturer into the sports, and let's just say, in speculating, we know Dodge is coming, but speculating that it might be Honda or Cadillac as a speculation, then we're talking about more charters and approaching and exceeding the 40 car number. And I think that might make it more competitive, but you're also opening the door to the possibility of cars not making it based on their speed. I know charters are supposed to guarantee spots, but doesn't that make it harder then for other teams to join and if to come into the sport if we have an already full field? I don't know. Go ahead.
It does, which is why that part of the charter team is what I've never been a favor of, when they said we want to invite more manufacturers, but you're limiting it because unless they buy up a charter for $40 million or run as an open team, not just do they get less money, but you're racing trying for 4 spots. You're not trying to get into a 40-car field. You're racing for 4 spots.
And it makes it harder, too, I think, for them to contend for a championship, which is the whole point of coming into the sport. is to try to, contend. Now, would a new manufacturer contend for a championship right out of the get-go? I'm not sure. But I think that there are some interesting thoughts that line up with the idea of more than one manufacturer coming in. And do you limit the number of charters that they can have if they come into the sport? And with the, 2 for now with the option to expand later kind of thing. So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Woo. So if NASCAR confiscates 7 charters, then all this doesn't even matter, right? Because then they've got 7 charters to give to new manufacturers that join. This whole
where are you getting 7 from? I'm showing what I found was 6, 3 from 2311 and 3 from Front Row.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. 6 of them. Okay, so
okay.
6. They've got 6 now. So if they win them back, and that helps solve a lot of headache for NASCAR. This lawsuit is about the right to sue. So why would you rightfully give away your right to sue when obviously NASCAR, right? Let's tie this together, right? When NASCAR can sit there and dangle and say, well, if we want to, we can expand the charters. We already give 4 open spots, and we've had 43 car fields. We'll just create more charters. But when you create more charters, this is something people don't think about. Now, all of a sudden, you've lessened the purse for your team.
Right.
You are cutting your money to allow another team to come in. I'm sure if I'm executive at Hendrick Motorsports, I only want 32 charters out there because that means I'm getting more of the pie than anybody. Now, all of a sudden, you increase the charters, you give the charters the 6, and then plus maybe 3 or 4 more for a new manufacturer. Well, that's money coming out of my pocket, which may be the whole reason why, just speculatively speaking, that, you didn't want to give away your right to sue NASCAR when all of a sudden they just wanted to come in and decide, well, hey, you were making this, but now you're going to make this because we had to add some more players to the game. I'm just leaving that out there, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those of certainly not outside the realm of possibility as to why some other teams aren't supporting the lawsuit by 2311. Sharon and I talked about that. Teams that signed the charter agreement said, hey, leave us out of this. We signed the deal. We're good with what we got. Although it may not have been everything they wanted, they agreed to it. So they said, leave us out of it. That was one of the things that was told to Team 2311. Don't drag us into it. You all did this. But there may be something to that. Now, when the other, 13 out of the 15 that signed the charter agreement, they expected to get paid based off of a 36 charter team. NASCAR is the one that came back once they didn't, 2311 and Front Row didn't sign, and we're going to try and sue, that NASCAR would said, okay, if y'all aren't going to be chartered teams, we'll cut it down to 32, run 8 open spots, and that extra money would go to the other 32 teams. So that was something new before they signed their agreement anyway. It would essentially be a bonus. Hey, by the way, since somebody else gave up this money, we're going to give it to you. It wasn't like they signed based off of that. So like I said, now if they were to use those charters to a new team or somebody coming in, like I said, it's not going to actually affect the ones that had already signed their agreement, because when they signed, those 6 were supposed to be there anyway, to their knowledge.
Yeah, and I just want to provide some clarification. You're right. The lawsuit is about one thing, but the injunction, it was about being able to race as a charter, even though they did not sign the agreement. And so that's really 2 different things that we're talking about there. So the injunction is the one that was overturned in favor of NASCAR. So again,
what can we add to that though? Because basically that's just the general statement, and I mean, there's really.
I'm just offering clarification.
Yeah, it's just hard to speculate what's going to happen in 3 weeks. It's almost detrimental to the sport of what could happen, and I just think that's probably
all this has already been detrimental.
I was going to say, hasn't it already been detrimental to the sport?
Well, I mean, you're thinking about 6 teams who could basically just close the door at the end of the year because they failed at trying to make a difference in NASCAR. I'm not saying that I would not stay in the sport if I no longer could have a charter.
But it sounds like they've got other teams in the wings.
Injunction, what is the next plan for these teams? What is their plan if they do not get this lawsuit? If they lose, what do they do? Because there's drivers that are tied to the charter. So Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, they can both leave at any point in time that they see fit. It's going to cost 23XI a lot more money to field cars. They're probably going to have sponsorship issues because now they're not guaranteed a starting spot, and all some starting parks have to do is throw some cars out there. You know, some of these other teams, speculatively speaking, could just throw a bunch of ghost cars out on the racetrack and really give these guys havoc, right?
Well, according to the judge, since they chose not to sign the agreement, they chose not to be a part of that system. And so you can't have your cake and eat it too. And
they have worn that statement out terribly.
But it's true.
No, it's not. It's like, I want to compare this to a new lease on an apartment, right? You've lived in the apartment. You've always had a lease that you signed, and you signed it before. And then all of a sudden, the apartment complex comes up and says, well, hey, here we are. We're going to be able to decide to tell you at any point in time we can kick you out, and there's not going to be anything you can do about it because in this new lease that we have given you, it states that you can't sue us. So we can do whatever we want to do. We can kick you out of this house anytime that we want to, or this apartment, and you can't do anything about it because you signed your right of litigation away. And that is where we are at. That is not having your cake and eating it too. That's a disagreement that there's a violation of a law. This is not a eat it cake and eat it too. This is an accuser accusing a corporation of basically of an antitrust law.
You're getting the lawsuit and the injunction. You're trying to combine
because they're saying NASCAR is breaking the law. That is why we're in litigation. And in order, what they have said, and I believe you can back this up, they've specifically told NASCAR and 23XI and Front Row that they need to get this solved so that it doesn't go before the judge, so that it doesn't go in any further litigation. That literally they need to go back to the bargaining table and figure something out so that this does not continue into December like it can. But the unfortunate circumstance is if these two teams lose this lawsuit, who cares about antitrust? The fact of it is the quality of racing will be diminished because you're losing two powerhouse teams. You can say what you want to about Front Row Motorsports, right? But they've been a quality team in the Cup Series. Michael McDowell went to racetracks and contended for wins. Tyler Reddick is one of the superstars of the sport, and Bubba Wallace carries a whole fan base that NASCAR needed for a very long time. Those guys, the drivers themselves will find rides. But the next person that comes in to swoop in and take control of these charters, are they going to be legitimately strong enough teams to field competitive race cars? If not, then NASCAR shot their own self in the foot by running off some people because they disagreed with an antitrust law that they were told that they cannot have a lawsuit against NASCAR.
We're talking about two different things. Right now, the topic on the table is about the injunction being overturned. Okay, the lawsuit is a different thing. But Jay, do you want to go into your thing?
Well, even with that of Chris, you referenced of an apartment complex. When that lease comes up and they say these are the new terms, if you want to live here, you have to agree to these terms. If you choose not to live there, then you go find somewhere else to live. If you say, okay, I want to live here, but not by your terms, you can't do that. That's the having your cake and eating it too. And that's what this injunction is. They said, we are not signing this agreement to be a charter team. NASCAR said, okay, you'll run as an open team. They came back and filed and said, well, we want to be paid and have the benefits of the charter, even though we won't sign the charter agreement. And some judge, who in my opinion needs to be removed from the bench, said, yeah, that's fine. You didn't agree to the charter, but you get the benefits of it. I mean, what sense does that make? I don't agree with that altogether. I am not disagreeing that 2311 has the right to sue NASCAR, but then you're taking that choice. You were talking about, well, what's going to happen to them, their teams, how are they going to pay their bills, keep their drivers and their sponsors. Exactly. Richard Childress Racing said, I am signing the agreement. I have 400 plus employees I got to keep employed. I'm signing the charter. It's not everything I wanted. Exactly. They made that choice.
That's exactly right. It's a matter of the choices that you make and living with the consequences of those choices. Now, is it unfortunate? Yeah, I think it's very unfortunate. But they made that choice. And once you make that bed, you gotta live in it. You gotta live with it. And that's what this 3-panel of judges, that's why they overturned the ruling, because you made a choice. You can't make a choice not to sign an agreement and then want to get the benefits of that agreement. That's, like Jay said, that's getting your cake and eating it too. Is that what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so it's the other 13 teams all said, we are signing this agreement. It might not be everything that we wanted, but it is better than we have ever had. And so they signed it. That's why they're saying, we don't want to be a part of this lawsuit. The other 13 teams are saying, we don't want to be a part of the lawsuit. But as far as the choices that 2311 and Front Row Motorsports made, they chose not to sign that agreement. Therefore, they have to live with that decision and not get the benefits of what that agreement provides. So I do think it's unfortunate. I think it's very unfortunate. So I do think that they're going to pay a heavy price for it. Now, they do have the option. There is an option. They have a 2 or 3 week period that they can appeal that decision. We're waiting to find out.
That's what I couldn't find anything on. Like I said, because it was up until Atlanta that before they would actually be racing as open teams if they didn't appeal this overturn.
They would start in July as an open team if they don't file the appeal. If they do, then it could go on longer. But they're just compounding their problem because at some point they're going to have to pay the piper. So they've gotten that money, and that was money that was supposed to be distributed among the 13 teams that did sign the agreement, and that money will be due back to back to NASCAR. I used to work at Avon, so I sometimes do that. So that money is expected to go back to NASCAR if they do not file that appeal. So as far as the charters are concerned, And I think that's what we were talking about, the charters. They go back to NASCAR, and I'm assuming that with new manufacturers coming in.
You know, that's before you turn it over to Chris again here. That's it, because NASCAR just said they would cut down and only run 32, the 32 that had signed. They didn't say they would take them and sell to others, that they would just not have those additional, those additional, what, 6, and pay the other teams additional money. The thing here that I see, even if, how do I say this? I'm on the side of NASCAR, but NASCAR said, okay, you have been granted this injunction. Up until now, you've been getting paid as a charter team, even though you didn't. When the lawsuit is settled, if we win, we want you to give that money back. Put it into a slush fund, and I'm going to use the term slush fund. I can't remember what they called it, but and 2311 said they wouldn't do it. You know, NASCAR is trying to work with them. They said, if you win the lawsuit, then that money is there. It'll go to you. If we win it, it's there and we get it. But they wouldn't even agree to that. I mean, they are so.
And you are right, Chris, that they did in the injunction ruling say that they wanted the teams to work with a mediator to try to resolve the situation.
I mean, I can give you what the antitrust laws are. I can give you an example of why it's important that we don't break those antitrust laws. And that is what the lawsuit is about. And so having your rights protected basically for something that you paid for is not as ludicrous as everybody believes it is. When you are suing
let me ask you,
claiming that they are breaking the law and breaking the rules.
When you join a company and you're employed by a company, do you know that you have to sign papers that say you will not sue them?
I just had to sign one the other day for my children because they work in the racetrack business. Yes, I'm all very, very well. And you know what?
Is that antitrust?
Here's the so you know what? A smart man will try to figure a way around it. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to set myself up to get fired. But you can buy a ticket at Talladega Super Speedway, and on the back of that ticket, it's a disclaimer that says you cannot sue. But you know what? That doesn't stop people from suing. Okay, that's and there's most likely a chance that there will be a settlement and it will never go to court. That's just the way it is. It depends on what you want to do. You know, you have the right to challenge the system. Is it unlawful for these corporations and these businesses to set a piece of paper in front of us that tells us that they can violate our rights and we cannot sue them? That is a major issue in America right now.
Where has NASCAR violated their rights?
Let's go over what an antitrust law is then, if that's what
that's not what I'm asking you.
Well, obviously, there is speculation to believe that NASCAR is violating an antitrust issue, which means that they have created a conspiracy to basically withhold other people from being. Yeah, that's what an antitrust is. It's written in the literature. Okay, antitrust laws are regulations that encourage competition by limiting the marketing power of any particular firm. This often involves ensuring that mergers and acquisitions don't overly concentrate market power or form monopolies, as well as breaking up firms that have become monopolies. Antitrust violations occur when companies engage in practices that harm competition, such as price fixing, bid rigging, and market allocation. These violations aim to prevent unfair business practices and protect consumers. So what
now
they
give
are
me an
saying
example of NASCAR doing those things.
When you give up your right to,
what is your, we're talking about facts here. Give me the facts. What has NASCAR done any of those things?
So let's go. Okay.
Give me
Denny
an
Hamlin's
example of
podcast.
NASCAR doing those things.
Denny Hamlin's podcast just today, he said, and I don't know what he meant by this, but I'm going to tell you what he said, and it sounded really suspicious, right? He said Ty Dillon was told that he couldn't gas. Ty Gibbs was told that he couldn't gas on it. What did that mean?
What?
He had the reins put on him. Ty Gibbs was very upset at the end of the race that they basically slowed him down, and whatever Denny Hamlin was meaning that. It has been for years speculated that NASCAR does not play a fair game and that they favor certain companies. And maybe they know more. When Jimmy Spencer sat down with the Dale Jr. download, there was things that they couldn't discuss because Jimmy Spencer, it's in other words, what they're trying to keep racing from being is WWE, where it's all staged. And if NASCAR wins this lawsuit,
NASCAR races are staged?
I believe we've gotten to a point to where even on teams that they are told where guys can win and where guys can't, even on specific teams, similar to Formula One. Formula One racing has been known to be able to send out a team order.
Give me your example. Where have they done that?
I mean,
you want to put it out there? Give me the facts.
It's speculatively speaking.
Okay, then if it's speculatively speaking, then you cannot say that NASCAR, you're speculating that NASCAR is violating.
But I'm not speculating when there is a lawsuit against NASCAR.
Okay, Sharon,
there's a reason why there's a lawsuit against NASCAR for the antitrust. Okay. Do you think that they just sat with some lawyers and said, hey, we're just going to make up the fact that NASCAR is trying to create an antitrust violation of the federal laws? No.
Can I jump?
Have proof somewhere that their federal law is being broken.
Chris,
I didn't necessarily mean that. Jay?
I didn't listen to Denny Hamlin's podcast. You're saying Ty Gibbs was told he could not improve his position so that Denny Hamlin could win.
Said, but you go back somewhere around the 35-minute mark and you listen to yourself on the podcast, because I do not know. When he was told that Ty Gibbs was upset because he was told that he had to hold back the reins. That's basically, and I was trying to get that cut out earlier, but I just
because he didn't have enough gas.
Hold on, Sharon. Hold on, Sharon. Who told Ty?
Yahoo is they're located in Michigan. Yahoo. So you would rather have your other car win? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. I think that there's things.
Well, that sounds like Joe Gibbs Racing. That doesn't sound like NASCAR.
Exactly. Hold on, Sharon.
There are things in NASCAR that have happened over the years that are just kind of unexplainable.
Well, what you're describing sounds like Joe Gibbs Racing and not NASCAR. Go ahead,
Sharon. Hold on. Chris, you said you listened to the interview, so you're the only one that has this information. I am just asking that question. Now, you've said it has to do with Yahoo. Okay, they're based in Michigan. At least now I can understand where this thought process may be coming from.
Right.
Okay. Right. Absolutely. Right. But
in a life of journalism, nothing is by consequence, and that's what you always have to look at. That there's that, and what is the telltale sign with Denny Hamlin making
hold on
on his podcast when he has an antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR? Because guys within the organization...
Stop talking for a minute, Chris.
Okay, I'll turn it off.
If that's the case, was that NASCAR that told Ty Gibbs not to go? Or was it Joe Gibbs Racing?
Joe Gibbs, exactly.
Then how does that have anything to do with an antitrust of NASCAR controlling?
Because if a team can control a race, then NASCAR can too. And that's what
NASCAR
what see. There's a reason, all I'm saying, and I don't want to say it anymore. There is a reason why these teams have an antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR. There's obviously some evidence somewhere that they are bringing to the court that says some things have been staged in this sport. Because that is the reason.
Every document that I have read, there has been no evidence, none. And that's what the court has said too. there has not been given sufficient documentation to support their claim, according to the court. Okay.
I just want to point out, NASCAR has made rules and penalized teams, manufacturers. It destroyed Michael Waltrip Racing because they were working in collusion.
That's right. So if you're saying that that's what Joe Gibbs Racing did this weekend, that could be a very serious offense.
I thought so as well when it come out of his mouth. It was almost jaw-dropping that kind of statement would be left open-minded the way that it was.
But
and
again,
I'll be glad to
it's
share.
Joe Gibbs Racing. It's not NASCAR.
There again, very true. But as I said, the argument of the antitrust laws, this is going to come down. I'm just so saddened that people
I
don't
want to
realize
see the evidence of it. I have yet to see any evidence of it.
Well, yes. And that is for the judges to decide. So,
and that's for the judges to
can we
decide.
not all agree it would be detrimental to the sport itself to lose these teams?
Sure, but again, we didn't make that decision for them. They made that decision.
Right. Yeah, I hope some way that next week or the week after, there's a miracle that happens and there's everybody says, "Kumbaya, we love you. We want y'all to be our friend," and all this comes to an end, because this is not good for the sport on either side.
Well, I didn't think it was good when it first started. I agree with you there. This is not good for the sport.
We're all in agreement there. This is not good for the sport. I agree with that.
Not.
Okay. And that's all I'm asking for, is that Denny Hamlin can say whatever Denny Hamlin wants to say. It sounds to me like he incriminated himself and his organization. But you got to look at what the facts are. And you got to put it in perspective between what specifically has NASCAR done to violate that antitrust law. And I have yet to hear anything.
I mean, as a fan for a very long time, I feel like there are certain times where certain rules are for certain people. And I think that I'm not the only one as a race fan that sees that.
I know. There's a lot of fans out there that speculate a lot of different things.
It's in the entire sport. It's in the entire sport. And the one thing that I thought that was going to help really get this cleared up was NASCAR was going to shut down the cheating. And we were going to
shut down the what?
The cheating. By offering more penalties, being stricter on the sanctioning body. And I really thought that was going to cuff things, and it was really going to change the sport. And I feel like as long as there is cheating allowed, and as long as that loophole was there, we couldn't get to where we are today with the racing that we have. And though these manufactured parts are a little bit different, and we don't have as much ingenuity going on in the shops, I feel like it was.
So you're advocating for cheating within the sport? You want a cheating champion to stand up and accept a crown?
No, not at all. I wouldn't know. I'm so much glad that.
Well, that's what you're saying, because we're not innovating. But maybe NASCAR is innovating in other ways.
Yeah. I don't know where I said that I wanted people to cheat. I didn't say that.
No, you were saying you felt that we were losing the innovation by not having the cheating.
I mean, that's what we lose. That's unfortunate. That is a sign that we have to give up, because now parts are manufactured. But at the same time, if it creates better racing and a more playable field, equal level playing field, an equal field, then I'm all for it. Because there have been times where, you guys, you can go back. Junior Johnson created some heads, and Junior Johnson said, "Don't let anybody see these heads." And then they all showed up for a meeting, and Hendrick was sitting at the table. And that's the whole reason why Junior Johnson went to Ford, because NASCAR shared some information that Junior Johnson thought was his. And so, we've one by one gotten away from that old side of racing. And unfortunately,
but for a good reason.
But for a very good reason. And I think that this is the final cup that's going to tie everything together, and we're going to see and be more respected amongst the motorsports world, because as we see with the way Penske handled the cheating situation with Indy, He wasn't having it. And he was upset that his name was in it. And he made proper decisions that made the sport at least look like it should in that kind of situation.
And yet we have team owners, that are expecting them to go outside of the lines because they want their team to win. So it starts at the top, and that's where you've got to change the frame of mind. Okay. Anything more you want to say, Jay?
No, I'm done. I don't ever want to speak on this again until the lawsuit's over.
Uh-oh, we lost Jay.
Jay, come back. I got to charge.
Okay, I think he'll come back. There he is.
What's the next topic?
Well, we lost you, Jay. I was asking if there was anything more that you wanted to say.
No, and don't take that as no, and I walked away. I was trying to look at what the next topic was going to be, and I hit the wrong button and logged myself out. That was not an intentional. I'm walking away from anything.
Okay, we were wondering.
Yeah, no, that was not the case. So, and now I lost the list of hot topics again.
How about we go to the in-season challenge?
Okay, I will gladly talk about that. Chris, we were together on an opinion last week, and we were wrong from my perspective. The question came about of why use 3 races to determine the seeding versus just waiting until they're ready to start it and go from top to bottom 1 through 32. With what we saw this weekend and looking at it, I have so changed my mind. You have Brad Keselowski.
The grid?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't you do that like you were doing earlier? All right. Well, okay. Where's the one that had the list of after Michigan?
Okay.
Had we done it off the top 32 in points when they shut it down, Brad Keselowski would have been the last seed. He is now currently 10th. Denny Hamlin would have been 4th or 5th. Now is guaranteed to be one of the top 3. I think this adds some excitement and the changes that are possible. I am so, like I said, I admitted it earlier, somebody smarter than me thought this out, and I now see it and understand it. These next 3 races to set up the seeding is thrilling to me. We know Denny Hamlin's going to
lay the land here, Jay. These
right,
are the car numbers over here of all of the drivers and the drivers that are in those cars. This tells you how they finished at Michigan. Okay. And then over here is pretty much how they're seated according to how they finished. So Hamlin, for instance, where's Hamlin on this list?
I don't understand the left side. I mean, I know what they're doing, but they're not listed alphabetic. Oh, I wonder if they're listed by car number.
Car number. That's what I said.
Oh, okay,
they're
okay.
Listed by car number over here. This is the car number, so that you can find the left side that you're looking for, and then
I got you now.
How they finished. Hamlin in car number 11 finished first, so he is the first seated driver. Buescher, who drives the 17 car, finished second, so he's listed in second, and so it goes. So there's only 32 drivers that qualify for the in-season challenge. There are 4 drivers that did not qualify and are no longer eligible. Keselowski beat out Shane Van Gisbergen by those 21 points that we talked about last week. Cole Custer was one, Riley Herbst and Cody Ware are the other drivers, along with Shane Van Gisbergen, that did not qualify. These are the 32 drivers that did qualify for the in-season challenge and how they're seated at this point in time.
So with that, and yeah, I missed that they were by car number. Like I said, I was trying to figure that out. I was like alphabetical. It wasn't by how they finished anything. So that was confusing. But if it's by car number,
I thought it would be important to lay that out so that people.
Yeah, no, it definitely helped me. I still don't like that, but at least now I understand it. But anyway, going back to, I'm going to use Brad Keselowski as my example. Him being 32nd, which he would have entered as the last ranked seed then, if you will. has been running so much better as of late. So by doing it over these 3 races, that's how they're currently running at those 3 tracks going into it. Now, momentum has a lot to do with it. We've seen Brad Keselowski just have so much bad luck. Hopefully that's behind him. They had all 3 Roush Fenway in the top 10 at Michigan. So that's where I'm saying I really do like the fact that they are doing these 3 races to seed them versus what they were in points based on their entire season so far. And Chris, I included you because me and you actually did say, hey, that's kind of confusing and whatnot last week. It may still be a little confusing, but I now see the importance of it and how much better I think it'll be by allowing them to seed themselves over these 3 races.
Based on their best finish in the 3 races. So if let's say Blaney, who is right now seated 29th, if he wins next week in Mexico City, then he's going to have one of that number 2 seat. So he can't take the number 1 seed.
Actually, he could. He still could, because then him and Denny Hamlin would be. He's only guaranteed top 3. Because if him and Hamlin both have a win, it would be whoever had the next best finish.
Correct. And Hamlin would have the next best finish, which would put Blaney into second.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Well, we don't know that yet. We're speculating if he should win. We don't know how. Maybe Hamlin would finish 29th or worse. We don't know.
There you go. Yep, there you go.
Okay. So they take the best finish of the 3 races, and then if a driver is tied with another driver, then they look at their second best finish. If there's still a tie, they go to the 3rd best finish, and if there's still a tie, they go to the point standings.
There we go.
But at the end, there's going to be 32 drivers that are seated, and then those drivers are put into this grid. It's a 2-sided grid. You've got 16 drivers on this side, 16 on this side.
Oh, yeah, that was the other thing.
Yes. And then they meet in the middle where it ends up being 2 drivers that are competing for the championship. And this is round 1. This is round 2, round 3, round 4. And then the 5th race is where they race for the championship. So these are the 3 races that determine the seeding. These are the 5 races that are the tournament, which happen to be the 5 races that are the TNT races, with the championship race being at the crown jewel of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which I really like that idea.
And that was the other thing, Chris. We did get clarification coming off this chart. They didn't do it in 4 regions, but if the top seeded driver were to advance, 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be the final 4. In the NCAA, there's 4 regions, and each one has their own number 1 seed. Theoretically, you would have all 4 ones come together. Here, the way they have it set up in this X, I call it an X format. 1, 2, 3, and 4, the top 4 could theoretically come together as the final 4.
Right. Based off the seeding.
Yeah, when we talked last week, I anyway was under the impression it was strictly just 1 page, 32 that listed. You had asked about that, and they did split it 16 by 16.
Right. Yeah, so I'm still a little confused on the. Are they taking the average finish, or are they giving seeds out by wins?
No,
So
okay.
automatically seeded into the second spot, or the. I mean, I thought if Hamlin come out and laid a stinker this week and finished 36, that he would have an average of 16th, or whatever
Nope.
it is that.
No, that's not how they're doing it. They're taking the best finish of the 3 races for each driver. So if Chastain finishes
there's a tie,
6th,
they're going to seed that one off of the second best finish.
Right.
correct. And then the 3rd best, and then it goes to the point standings if there's still a
So
tie.
we should expect multiple ties in this situation.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I
Possibly.
kind of get it. I get it. this is an in-season tournament, so what we need to understand with that is this has absolutely nothing with how the season started or how the season is going to finish. And I think that NASCAR
Correct.
drew those lines, and that's the reason for the confusion, and that's the reason.
It has nothing to do with the playoffs.
It has nothing to do with how the season started. It has nothing to do with the playoff. Though the way it landed was you had to qualify to get in, and unfortunately, a big player in some of these races would be Shane Van Gisbergen, and unfortunately, he didn't make the grade, and so that's like LeBron not making the playoffs. So
Right.
it's big. It's an upset, but from the way I'm seeing it now, I would give NASCAR kudos for keeping it fair and making this about an in-season tournament, not an early championship bid or anything to that manner. This is going to be strictly based off of how these guys performed in these 3 races once they've qualified into the top 32 positions. I kudos to that. They what seemed overcomplicated actually makes sense when you start mathing the math.
And then it's a head-to-head battle for the next 5 races. So if you beat your driver, it doesn't matter how you finish. As long as you beat the driver that you're head-to-head against, you will advance.
I think we're looking at who's the best, right? Who's the best 3 finishes. But I think what we should really look at is the bottom of this list at some of the good that's near the back. And if they were to happen to have another bad finish, where that's actually going to seed them, because they'll only have 1 good finish out of the 3. And so
if they have 1 good finish out of the 3, that's the finish that they'll use to determine their seeding.
And what will make this very interesting is if we have maybe a Joey Logano seated against Ryan Blaney, or possibly one of the other powerhouse, maybe a Hamlin versus a Bowman or something in that situation. And so it's definitely going to keep things moving. Look, I'm all about letting the little guy have a chance, and I really think that this may give one of these, Zane Smith or Keselowski, even. I hate that we're even talking about Keselowski like that, but it gives, look at the run Ty Dillon had this past weekend. So, and Carson Hocevar. It really does give these guys some incentives to get up there and dig for that next best place, because it could have a very big rendering for where they are seated when we go live for these 5 races.
Exactly. That's where Sharon and I talked about this after the show last week. Speaking of which, once we're done with the show tonight, hang around, don't walk away. Once we shut down, we're going to have a discussion as far as next week. But that was one of the other things we were talking about, of if you look at it on the season, most consistent, yes, William Byron at the top in the points with only 1 win. But the next drivers I see maximizing this in-season challenge are drivers like Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, and Ryan Preece. I think were the ones I named the other night, because they have just been consistent. It's not a checkers or wreckers. And I'll use Kyle Larson there. Wins races, but then also wrecks himself out or gets wrecked out. So I think we will see some great matchups in this, and have possibly what may be a surprise to some come out as the $1 million winner out of it, just because they're consistent. When we look at the NASCAR season-long championship, you got to be winning and advancing. In this case, as Sharon said, all you got to do is beat the one you're going against. If they finish 25th, all you got to do is finish 24th. It don't matter if you're 24th up to first, because none of that matters. It's as long as you are in front of that other driver. So with top guys like we've seen some of them, think about Christopher Bell. He won 3 races. Well, what's he done lately? Not as good, So, this type of tournament like
Byron,
this.
Who's leading the point standings. He finished 25th in this.
And that's right. And right now, that's where he's seated. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting. And I think you're going to see a surprise winner come out of this. It's not going to be necessarily Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, or William Byron, because Hamlin's been another one. He won 2 early on, went for 3, didn't get it, had some DNFs. for this $1 million over these 5 races, you basically have to just be on par, not great, but not bad, to get through it, because a DNF will take you out.
Okay. Any other comments on it?
I'm just excited for it. I mean,
I am too. I'm kind of excited for it too. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Chris, you'll have to go. Yeah, you'll have to go back and watch the 2 previous videos where I started talking about this and the possibilities. Because yeah, I get excited. I am really thrilled with the way this is going to play out. Again, not even knowing. It might not be my favorite driver that does it. I really, like I said, I'll put it out there. I think drivers Ryan Preece and Bubba Wallace that have just been consistently the same week in and week out have the advantage going into this type of a bracket, because they don't have the bad finishes as often as others or DNFs that we've seen. So yeah, it's pretty much, you got to have 5, not top 5s, just solid finishes each and every week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting and a lot of fun to watch.
$15.
I think we'll have more to say as it progresses. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Chris?
It's $1 million. My thing with this is, though, how many races do we have left before the end of the chase? Right, this is going to push
the end of the regular season.
Yeah, the end of the regular season. We're halfway through the year. So.
Yeah, what did we say? I think 11. Yep.
So 8 races. This is going to take up, 7 more races. That's only going to leave 4 races before we crown an eventual champion. So maybe this is good to help lead up to that. Maybe there's a little bit more significance there than what we can speculate at this point in time. We've got to get through it to see how the hype is built, how the momentum is built. And we're kind of letting Prime build it up only to send it to TNT. And I haven't heard much about it through Prime. Have you guys?
I like the broadcast. I think the broadcast has been fantastic.
Of this actual tournament. Have they gone through this very much? Have they mentioned it very much at all?
No. Sharon and I talked about this of the one aspect of maybe NASCAR kind of dropped the ball is not having all this out already and explained it. Now, maybe they will once the 3 seeding races, but they hadn't really taught. I didn't hear a lot of it as far as that during the race. So I'm with you on that, Chris, from the broadcaster side and the promotion side. I do think they could have done a little bit better. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, though. This is the first year. So, again, if they do this again, I think we'll see some changes in how they prepare for it, explain it, and prep it, and hype it. As I think you used the word hype it.
Yeah, content is king, man. Content is king.
I agree.
And, they're out there drinking beer at the end of these races when I think it's in NASCAR's best interest for all around to be buying people into this concept that this is what we're going to do. And unfortunately, as you said, Jay, for some reason, there's no relevance to it. Like, it doesn't matter. And
I feel like we're the only ones talking about it.
Yeah, in reality, the Dash for Cash, it's kind of going that same route where it's not really, it's a kind of a side note. And unfortunately, I don't believe putting this much effort into a side note is the correct way to do things. You've got to hype it up. You got to say, man, this is the next big deal. This is $1 million. You want us to get all hyped up for one night of $1 million? Let's try 8 races for $1 million. So
I'm not. Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
You know what I've heard, Chris? I've heard that this bracket idea was Denny Hamlin's.
It was. It really was. Yeah, it was. I was listening to the podcast when he come up with it.
And I've said that all along. If Denny Hamlin is the one that convinced NASCAR to do this, I will pat him on the head, give him a hug or whatever, because I really like it that this is being implemented. They adapted it to racing. Again, it's not quite the basketball tournament. But the one thing, and Chris, I'm 100% with you. I think this should have been much more hyped and promoted. I'm not saying it's right, but Amazon wouldn't be doing themselves any favor to hype the 5 races because it's not their races, it's TNT's. I can see where they may not, but they should have at least been saying, hey, our 3 races or 3 of our races are the seeding rounds, and that hasn't been really addressed. And that's the first I heard of it because I didn't even know Nashville was the cutoff. And it got mentioned. They're like, oh, this is the last race to, qualify in. That was news to me. And that goes back to all along, NASCAR as a whole, an industry did not promote this and understand that hey, this is the cutoff. This is the 3.
And we were looking for the grid and couldn't find one.
Yeah, that didn't come out until the day of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I do think that they could do better with that.
Yeah, definitely.
I have NASCAR media credentials, and we're given privilege for a certain website, NASCAR Media. And unfortunately, I searched from top to bottom on it, and it really was no mention to it. So I'm sure it is now.
It's there now.
That's great. Are you? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying
it's
to find
there now. That's where I got it from.
Okay, so I was trying to find some homework on it last week, and I couldn't come up with anything. So at least
there wasn't anything out there last week.
Yeah. So hey.
It wasn't until we did the previews that I finally found some information on that website. So,
well, live and learn. Again, this is the first time they're doing it. So, like I said, I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt, but I certainly would have done things a lot differently to have people informed going into it. Like I said, especially the 2 races. What did Prime? I'm trying to think when Prime picked up. Of, hey, these are the last couple races to get into the in-season challenge. It's going to end at Nashville. Be looking at that each week.
Race, I think.
Yeah, it was after that race, and especially being that Brad Keselowski, Riley Herbst, and SVG, you could have put a focus on them. Hey, wherever they're finishing could affect the getting into this in-season challenge. Versus after the fact, be like, well, SVG didn't make it. Make what? Oh, that's the cutoff. Oh, okay.
And you got to wonder if the drivers even knew anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
mentioned it.
As excited as I am about it, I'd have been out on the street corners hollering about it.
Do you, as a race team, emphasize this? I mean, that may be the. Know what I mean? Do you make this a significant run, or is it just maybe we'll be there, and if we do, we'll play the cards that's given to us? That's a decent question there. I don't think anybody has the answer to.
Well, yeah, just thinking about even when a lot of times, and I'll use AJ Allmendinger because he calls in weekly to Dave Moody's show. You talk about that. He's like, "Are you looking at the points? Are you whether or not you got to have a win yet to get into the playoffs?" And he says, hey, if we focus on running good each and every race, that'll take care of itself. So I'm sure they're aware of it. Now, whether they go out and say, hey, at all costs, I got to beat driver X because that's who I'm matched with. Yeah, there might be. And here again, this hopefully doesn't come back to bite NASCAR as an industry or teams. If you hear a spotter say, hey, throw a block on this lap car or whatever, because it's your head-to-head guy, or getting a teammate, hey, slow this dude down so our guy can get, it could cause some major, because we've seen that before when it came to a team getting another car. Hopefully that doesn't bite them in the butt. Yeah, Chris, why you put that thought in my head?
You're on mute, Chris.
It's definitely, it's a question worth asking because, the motto of the All-Stars, I'll wreck my mama for $1 million.
Right.
Do these guys add this into strategy, or are they playing a strategy right now? Is it even significant to the teams and drivers and part of the plan put together by the crew chief and car chief? So those are all questions that I have. If the players aren't buying into it, if the drivers, I should say drivers, are not buying into it, and the teams are not buying into it, then it may be the reason why the networks aren't really buying into it. We want to see the strategy, but, basically at the end of the day, it could just be a game of marbles, and wherever they land is where they land.
Well,
they have a
go ahead.
page, Chris, over on NASCAR.com as well. It doesn't have the grid, but it has what it's all about and how it's determined.
To go to Chris is speaking about, if I were a team owner, I would say, hey, there's $1 million. Yeah, that's important. However, the overall championship is worth more than that. So are you going to race strategize around this tournament? Probably not. However, be aware of it. Again, if you know you don't have the winning car for the weekend, now your focus might be on, hey, do we have a better car than driver X, because that's who we're paired up against. Or, again, we don't have a shot at winning. Let's try and strategize to at least move on in this tournament, have a shot at the million. But like you said, the overall championship is obviously going to be the most important. This really is, like I said, as I see it, being consistent for 5 weeks straight. So some of your mid-tier teams maybe, but again, if you're looking at the NASCAR championship, some drivers, and I know Brad Keselowski was one of them, already said, hey, I'm pretty much in a must-win situation. I got to find a track I got to win at, because with him being 32nd or third, maybe 30th now, he knows pointing his way in over the next 11 races, highly, highly unlikely.
And I think about Mexico City, I think that puts a different thing in it too, because a driver like Daniel Suarez could win at Mexico City. He's a very popular driver in Mexico, and I'm sure that would be a goal of his, is to win at that race. Also, you've got road course drivers that could win at that race as well. And there is, it's kind of interesting how they put this together to include the road courses. And 2 road courses in the 5 races are on the schedule. So just putting that out there. No comment?
No, it's going to be interesting, like I said, and the possibilities of even the scenarios just from this first round of seeding. Like I said, Denny Hamlin's guaranteed to be one of 3. The road course, Sharon, you mentioned Mexico City being a road course. AJ Allmendinger, if FCG wins it, yeah, he's in the championship playoffs, but not through the tournament. So now we're talking about Denny Hamlin being one of 2 because nobody else to have a first place finish. We're going to look to Pocono, right? That's the third one.
That's the tricky triangle.
And there's some drivers there. You mentioned Alex Bowman. That's a track where I could see him being solid at. So getting obviously a better seating than where he's at right now after Michigan race. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, the possibilities here are endless. And I hope NASCAR does do a better job with their broadcasting and hyping it, explaining and showing some of the things. Maybe they can get their pre-race puppets to talk about it.
That would be nice. Anything more you want to say, Chris?
I would suggest doing this maybe at the start of March Madness, or even at the conclusion of March Madness. Push it back a little bit further away from the championship. Maybe start this at Talladega or something like that. That way it doesn't interfere with the roll to the championship, regular season championship, as people are trying to make their way into the chase. That's the most important thing. So if you back this up a little bit and you put it more in through the April, May, and finish it up by June or July, that still gives separation between that and the actual championship run. So I would suggest that if I could give any suggestions to NASCAR. Let's feed off of the Sweet 16 and create our own bracket. That way it turns attention from March Madness to NASCAR. Doing it this late in the season doesn't really bring relevance to what this is mimicking. So if we could get it pushed a little bit. What do you guys think? I mean, does that sound like a good idea?
I'm not sure. I'm not decided on that yet. I'm wondering if they didn't choose this as a build-up to the playoffs for the in-season champion, because I think about back when, one of my big complaints is it seemed like 10 races before the playoffs began, Jimmy Johnson would go into, I'm going to just kind of ease back.
Ride it out. Yeah.
Ride it out until the playoffs begin and not take any chances kind of thing. And so I think that this might be an effort to try to get those drivers to not do that laying back and riding it out until the playoffs begin kind of thing. And or at least reduce the number of races that they do that in by having this in-season challenge. Just speculation on my part, but that was my thinking.
I think you all are both overthinking it. You got to remember, this is happening on TNT. They only have 5 races throughout the 36 races. They said, we got to make our 5 special. I think that is very specifically why it's being done here and now where it's at. You know, Chris, you did, there is a valid point to that of maybe too close to the playoff battle, because then you might lose the focus is on that and not the in season. But also, I don't necessarily agree with what you were saying of bumping it right up against the NCAA, because yes, it is a format off of that. And the NBA actually 2 or 3 years now that they've done the in season. I'd have to ask my nephew; he's a basketball fan. So you want it to be unique. You don't want it to be, oh, we just watched a bracket, a tournament. I don't want to watch another one. So moving it a little further away from it. But like I said, I don't think any of that matters. I think it's TNT's deal for their 5 races was the specific to it.
The thing that I don't get is if it's to engage fans during this TNT portion of the race, why is there not more promotion for it? That's the part that we
already had that discussion.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher to me. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Chris, I think we're back to you to pick a topic.
Is he back on mute? You awake, Chris?
No. Sorry, I was talking on mute. Let's do the engine and the horsepower increase.
Oh, okay. That's been in discussion, Jay. You want to talk about that?
You know, this is one of those of I don't have enough information or knowledge as a racer, a driver, to know. I am not one of those fans that honestly I'm trying to think who it was. Somebody else that used to be on the show used to talk about that. If the car only has X number of horsepower versus lower than what it used to, I don't look on the track and go, oh, yeah, that car's slower. You know, what produces great racing is what I want to see. Now, do the drivers say, hey, if we have more horsepower, we have more control, we can do more, then I am all for it. What I do like is that for 2, maybe 3 years here with the next gen car, NASCAR said, we're not messing with the horsepower. This is what you got. We'll mess with we'll play with and adjust tires and different things to try and get better competitive racing. NASCAR has now said, okay, we'll talk about horsepower. So if they're saying, hey, maybe there is something that can improve on-track quality racing, we'll talk about it. That's what I like. As far as I'm not watching NASCAR no more because they don't run 900 horsepower, I guarantee you, there might be a handful of people, but you take them to a track and let a car go by and go, okay, how much horsepower did it have? They're not going to know the difference, right? Chris is nodding. Yeah, I'm like, other than having somebody say, hey, they're running this horsepower, you're not going to know. But that's just me. Like I said, if the drivers are saying they would have more control and it would create better racing, I say have that discussion, test it out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be tested out, but it should be tested out in some kind of race conditions. The one thing I don't like about tests is you've got, 4 or 5 cars that are out there testing something, and then the car reacts so differently when it's in a race condition. I wish there was some kind of a way that they could do that and have more cars on the track when they test something like this. But yeah, I think it should be tested, whether it be an exhibition race or whatever, but give it some kind of a testing opportunity where points are not on the line. And I think an exhibition race would be the best way to do that. Maybe test it with the 4 or 5 cars first and then do an exhibition race and see how that works out. But I've heard both sides of this story. Some drivers say that the increased horsepower will give them more grip and more driver control. Other people say, nope, it's not going to help. So I'm not sure who to believe at this point as far as which way that goes. So I think it needs to be tested out.
The truth is out there somewhere.
The truth is out there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if I'm a team owner, the first thing I want is something else to change so that I have a better chance of getting it figured out before somebody else, because the name of the game right now is there's teams that have found something while others are still lagging behind. But I don't really believe 70 more horsepower is going to make or break what NASCAR looks like. May it be a little bit better for the driver on takeoff or something to that? Maybe so. You know, but is it going to cost? Horsepower costs money. We know that. Speed costs money. So, and it doesn't matter what form of racing you're in, to increase the horsepower means an increase in spending. I'm so confused because all I hear about is we spend too much, but a racer's going to holler, I want more horsepower. It's been said for 25 years, if we slowed the cars down, we would get better racing. Now we're all complaining because everybody's running the same race time and can't move through the field. But one thing that Denny Hamlin did say on his podcast that was kind of an eye-opener is he basically said that there is a way now to get up to the car in second place and outside of using the side draft, make the car wiggle a bit, take something away from the car that allows a pass to happen. So what that tells me is Denny Hamlin has found a secret operative way to basically race competition, and he's not going to be willing to say it, what exactly he does, but as time goes on, right, he's figuring it out. So that's all that's going to happen. If NASCAR decides to go to 750, I would see a bump to 800 as maybe a significant bump. 100 horsepower, 130 more horsepower than what we're running. That's a significant boost. If you get off into a 4-cylinder car that has 200 horsepower, and then you get in a Camry that has 300 horsepower, you're going to feel the difference on takeoff. So I think that would make a difference for them. But it's challenging because, once again, you're racing these motors on 3 races before they refresh. You would have to make changes to that. You would have teams that would, there's a limit on how quickly you can refresh the motor to drive down the cost. So here we are. We're going to drive down the cost, but now we're going to increase horsepower, which is going to increase the cost. I'd just as well to go back to build your own motor, run what you brung, right? And hope you brought enough.
Jay?
Yeah, no, I was, man, you were making some great points up until that, Chris. No, again, do I enjoy that? And they had that option, if you remember, at the All-Star race, and they didn't want to do that 4-1 race because of what you mentioned, the money. Right. And when this conversation happened on Sirius XM with Dave Moody, that was the whole thing. You ran through I think everything in the gamut of it. It's not just, let's give them more horsepower. It's not that simple. Like you mentioned, given 60 to 70, not going to help. You're not even going to have the slightest inkling of there being a difference. So it's got to be up to 130, I think, is about what they said, where you really have that difference maker. Then now you're talking the money to it. First off, to find this way to increase it and get it there. Then now we're talking about, okay, if NASCAR still holds it, and I don't remember how many races they have to run the engine before they do, we might see more blown engines like we used to in the past. That costs money. And as Moody pointed out, that was one thing you didn't hit on, or as directly anyway. You hear all the drivers saying, yeah, more horsepower. The fans, more horsepower. How many team owners do you hear hollering for more horsepower? So that is a factor, and that was part of what NASCAR looked at was we're trying to help y'all save money.
Well, and when they had a chance to run what you brung in the All-Star race, all of a sudden everybody who was calling for more horsepower said, oh no, that's going to cost too much. We can't do that. So I thought that was rather humorous.
Well, here's the real thing is do you allow your competition to do things that you didn't think of? So there is a closed box with that. As soon as you open it up, that's giving your competition something to figure out that you ain't quite figured out yet. And once you figure something out, you learn how to manipulate it into your system so that it works. And that's something that I'm proud of the lower teams standing up and saying, we don't want to spend that kind of money because we don't want to make there a separation in the field of gooder and badder.
And a driver like Chris Bell, says he doesn't want more horsepower.
Oh, of course not.
He's used to, he's a dirt track racer. So that works just fine for him.
Yeah, the other thing you hit on, Chris, though, that was interesting. You're right. It definitely gives, at least initially, and it may be not a super funded team, whoever figures it out first has the advantage, at least for a short time. But as we've always said here on Fan4Racing, eventually the cream will rise to the top. So it may not be Hendrick that figures it out first, but they will catch up.
Yeah.
Well, you look at it, and look, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and it's definitely not a topic that you can really bring to the table other than just by watching with my own eyes. It seems like Hendrick has found something through corner speed, and that's been very obvious throughout the year that these cars can create a lot of separation in the corner. So that gives the Penske's, the Spires, and all these other organizations a back to the drawing board of why do they have so much corner speed? What did they find that we haven't found yet? And obviously, I believe Carson Hocevar may have had a little bit of that in the Spire car, right? But then he blew out the tire, which may lead back to something within that area. I don't know.
Well, I think they're playing with the tires, and they openly admit now that we went too far with adjusting the air pressure in the tires, and that's why they were getting the flat tires. NASCAR, Goodyear gives them a recommendation, and they tend to go beyond that recommendation to get more grip from the tire. And that's why you see those flat tires. But we're watching them and how they're racing. And if we're watching and seeing what Hendrick is doing differently on the track, they're manipulating the air between the other drivers and themselves so that it makes it easier for them to pass. We've known all along there's drivers who figured out that manipulation of the air to allow them to pass for a long time, because while everybody was complaining that their driver wasn't able to pass, we were watching other drivers pass through the field, start from the back and make it to the front. And it's because they figured out that manipulation of the air. Well, the same thing with Hendrick. All these teams are watching and observing every little thing, and they're going to eventually catch up with where Hendrick is. And it's going to be back to that level playing field again. But, and that's why these things go in waves. That's why it goes in waves. And then at that point, NASCAR might have to come up with a new car again. And then everybody will be back to square one trying to figure it all out again.
Well, I hope not. I hope we hold this car for quite a while, because I think that this car does have potential to be the greatest car that NASCAR's ever built. And I think that as long as we keep chugging away, look, one thing that we've not discussed is the impact that Alex Bowman had on the wall in Michigan. And that was a hard hit.
It was ugly. Ooh, that was ugly.
Yes, I felt so bad for him.
I mean, I was in shock. I was in utter shock. Like
I was looking at his eyes, trying to look at his pupils.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, where we started with this car and where we are now, we've made a lot of gains already. And if we can just stick to the chipping away and more gains equal better racing, the product will improve. We've got to improve the product at the short tracks, and maybe a horsepower increase will be something that shows relevant there. I do believe that maybe the diffuser belongs on a 1.5 mile speedway, but doesn't belong on a short track, and we can argue that. That's just me thinking engineering side, that you take the diffuser out from underneath the race car, and then obviously you're back to slamming the car on the ground and creating that kind of force, which makes it a little bit easier to drive through the corner, and of course hopefully leads to better racing. I don't have that between that and maybe adding some horsepower, but we would get off the rails if I continued on a little bit more into that.
Okay, Jay.
Well, the couple things from what Sharon said, and this goes back to, I feel like it kind of goes back to Dale Earnhardt, because they always said he could see the air when it came to drafting before aerodynamics and the wind tunnel and all that came into play. So you're right. There are some drivers that do know how to manipulate or use the air. I don't know if that's what HMS is doing or not. You mentioned Denny Hamlin said he found something when he catches a car and how to go about it. So there are those little things. The one thing I will say, though, is even if you see what somebody else is doing, and I think back to Kevin Harvick at Phoenix, the line he drove, and they referenced it as the Harvick line. Other drivers watched it, tried to drive it, and came back and said, I don't know how he does it, what he does down there, what he's got in that car that allows him to do it, because they could not duplicate it, So there's still that aspect of, and I think of somebody like Kyle Larson, of just the way they do the throttle, with their foot. Yeah, you can see the RPMs or whatever, the throttle response, but there's certain things you just can't teach or duplicate. If you're like me and my foot's heavier of feathering a throttle, even if I'm feathering a throttle, I'm going to be heavier on it and get pulled over or snapped by the radar on pit road because I have a heavy foot. I mean, so there are still those little things. But I think the original topic was just NASCAR being willing to talk about, hey, if y'all really say horsepower is a key, let's talk about it. Do I see it happening next year? Don't know. Because again, the door had been closed, locked, barred, shut down. Don't even come to us. At least now, which goes back to other things, NASCAR is willing to listen and have a conversation. And I'm all for that. I mean, that's where it starts.
Let's just make sure we're not messing up a product that we've got really good, and that's 1.5 mile
Agreed.
speedways.
Agreed.
I agree.
Let's do it at a short track. We have a different horsepower package for super speedway. Let's give these guys a little bit more horsepower at the short track. Let's leave the 1.5 mile package alone, because finally we have
That's good.
A decent amount of races throughout the season that are really good. In Michigan is like, it's I love Michigan, like especially after this weekend. I really love Michigan.
No doubt.
Because it reminded me kind of an old Atlanta, where speed was king. Atlanta used to be the fastest speedway on the circuit, and Michigan now has taken back those reins. We've seen different style racing. We've seen where the draft really mattered, but not in the significance of pack racing that we would get from Talladega or an Atlanta. So we kind of got the best of both worlds with this past weekend's race at Michigan. I would be tearful if we did something that changed that. And look, when you're pushing 205, I don't know if horsepower is what you really want to increase at a place like Michigan. So that's once again where I believe the horsepower may come into effect with short track racing. And then all of a sudden you're not, maybe you don't have to change so much of the rules on when to refurbish these motors.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you hit on something really, really important there. That goes back to the old days, and I don't know what created it, but we don't see it Daytona or Talladega anymore. Of you draft up to somebody, and Talladega Nights usually called it the slingshot. Made a big deal out of it. But when you got there, you could pull out and pass them and I called it earlier. I said slicing and dicing, the slide jobs back and forth. Now I understand Michigan, you got a wide track and they weren't double and triple file, but that's what I'd like to see Daytona and Talladega be able to go back to. But we don't have that anymore with the pack racing, which is why I don't like the pack racing. And again, I got to go back to Earnhardt. Earnhardt coming through the field with Kenny Wallace being his bumper buddy. I mean, they ripped through the field, and you can't do that anymore. And that's why I don't like pack racing. What we saw at Michigan, I'm with you. I mean, I was just on the edge of my seat watching both the Truck Series and the Cup Series from front to back of the field. Cars going around each other, and then they slow up a little bit. The guy would get them right back. You know, we saw several battles. Every other lap, they were swapping positions. I loved that.
It was a fun race to watch, no doubt about it. And I wouldn't mind watching another race at Michigan International Speedway. But I'm with you, Chris. Let's not mess up something good that we have on some of these other tracks. If it's short tracks where we need that extra horsepower, do it just for that track. But again, you got to look at the cost versus the benefit. And that's what I think the discussion is all about. Okay, anything else we want to talk about before we move on here?
No, I guess I'll ask a question then. I don't know if either one of you have experienced it or can relate to it or understand it. Have you ever built a house with somebody for 5 years, then been told to get out, only to come back a year later and live in the guest room with your partner's new partner in the house? Because that's how Corey Lajoie referenced going back to Spire Motorsports to run in the Truck Series. If you haven't seen his interview, you got to watch it. It's hilarious. But that's how he compared it. That was the analogy he used to talk about coming back and working with Spire Motorsports. Now, obviously, they got along. He got a top 5 finish out of it, and I was thrilled to see that. And he's got, I think, 8 more races. I think it was a 9-race deal that they agreed to, which would be all of the playoff races since a Cup Series or Xfinity regular can't be in those. But that analogy, man, it cracked me up. But I was also glad he had a great finish. Had a shot at winning, actually.
I can see him going in there and identifying, well, this is different. Well, we didn't do it like that before. What's that all about? Yeah, I can appreciate where he's coming from.
I just now realized that what you said there, Jay, he's disqualified from running the trucks during the playoffs because he's claimed points.
No, he's not.
He's not. Okay, that's good. Okay.
He's not full.
He's not full time anymore. He got fired.
Correct.
So
yeah, he I don't know. I know that they said that's why he was in it, because Kyle Busch couldn't run in those latter ones because of the playoffs. He must not have declared for Cup points. I know he's run a couple of races, but he must not be declared for Cup points, because that's what determines it.
That may have been something in his contract as well with Spire. You know, he's a hired driver and he's under contract. I don't know if he rightfully wanted to drive this truck, guys. I'm just not sure that that's really what he wanted to do.
No,
like
you got to remember.
I mean, but since he's under contract, if he doesn't do what Spire tells him to do, then
he wasn't under contract though to Spire. Remember, he got let go or swapped. However they did it, he went to Rick Ware Racing, and they brought in Michael McDowell to Spire. That's where the whole living with the now coming back comes from, because they let him go to bring in Michael McDowell and Justin Haley. McDowell came from front row. I take that back. It was essentially a driver swap of Justin Haley and Rick Ware Racing for Corey Lajoie and Spire Motorsports. The being full-time isn't the issue. It is where you declare championship points. And I don't know then, that being that he was on a race-by-race, part-time, wherever he could get something, being that he didn't have any full-time, that he just didn't declare for any championship point runs. But I know that is one of the reasons they said
5 races, even if he declared for Xfinity or Cup, he could still race 5 races.
But his deal was for 9. But his deal was for 9 races. So that tells me he wasn't declared in any other series.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. It is for 9 races.
And I just know they made a point of that's why Kyle had to come out, was because he would use up his 5 and he is Cup eligible, so thus couldn't run in the playoff races. None of his 5 could be in the playoff races.
Okay.
Well, but yeah.
I did find in 2023 where Corey Lajoie signs multi-year contract extension with Spire Motorsports, and that was on August 2nd of 2023. So a multi-year deal would include the 2025 race season.
But that went away when they traded him off to Rick Ware. That was that's the whole breakup, getting kicked out of the house.
I don't want to get into an argument, but it is definitely not the first time that a company was picking up the tab for a driver to drive somewhere else. It's happened a lot of times in motorsports. It happens all the time in motorsports. So I'm just saying that it does show that he signed a multi-year deal with Spire. And
I think they released him from that.
Though. Go back and look at when he left and they brought in Justin Haley, of whether they bought him out or paid him anyway or whatever. It was essentially, we don't want you no more.
Yeah.
That's why he said it was a year later he came back and he's living with the other one and their new partner. I'm telling you, watch his video, man. That interview is hilarious. I found it hilarious anyway. But at least they're all getting along and doing good runs. Exactly.
Yeah, he did really well in that Spire truck, which tells me that they've upped their game.
They have across the board, and I mean even the Truck Series, for most definitely, being that they took over for KBM, they did go through a little bit of a slowdown, but came back to where they were and maintained. Maybe not the same as what KBM was at, but I've been really impressed with. And we talked about Carson Hocevar. I think their Cup side has drastically upped its game. And we've seen that, like I said, Carson Hocevar coming off a best finish of 2nd at Nashville, up front and leading and in contention until the tire issue. Although, again, I don't think he was going to make it. He was one of those that wasn't going to make it on fuel, unfortunately. But just good to see, and he talks about that, of being able to run up front and have the tire issue be the problem. He was a little disappointed, but they'll be back.
They'll be back. I think the only thing that we haven't talked about yet is the Rockingham for sale. Rockingham Speedway.
Yeah, Chris, you got $12 million?
All right. Yeah, Rockingham for sale. This is part of the game plan. That's what the owners had every intention to do. They put in a little bit of investment to bring it back. They created a little bit of capital. Now they want to cash in on it to somebody who can better suit the facility, somebody who can take it to the next level. I'm just not sure that there's an interest with ISC or SMI to do that. So it's maybe wrong timing. I would hate to see this one fall back through the cracks, but there's been so many. I guess you're basically there's 2 players in this ownership game, and that's SMI and ISC. And they've gone out and they've made contracts with these other, like Coda and Iowa. I think Iowa's now owned by ISC. But they've,
I think that one's now NASCAR.
The Coliseum, I'm not even sure who owns the St. Louis track. But they've gone out and they've purchased these other facilities, or they've made contracts out with them to race there. I just don't see Rockingham being added. We're talking about Rockingham, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We just, the likelihood that one of these major corporations buys that racetrack to add to a schedule, Just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, SMI really did a great job with bringing North Wilkesboro back. We've yet to see a cup race added there. The only thing that I think we could keep our fingers crossed on is that maybe they do buy into leasing this racetrack or creating some kind of ownership partnership and bringing the all-star race there as we did with North Wilkesboro, give North Wilkesboro a date. That has to come from somewhere else, right? And we're already down to one Michigan race, and we like Michigan. So now we want Michigan to have another race, but Jay will say, no, we don't. And I respect that because Jay doesn't want to go to the same racetrack twice in a season. And I do understand that. But it is kind of a sad moment if Rockingham has to shutter its doors again because there's just not really much interest into adding that track to any significant schedule or a player of the game ownership, an ownership that has the ability to bring this to the NASCAR level.
Yeah, Jay, I don't really have a lot more to add than what Chris already put out there. That's kind of exactly what I was thinking, is that this was a kind of a planned thing. The owner did say, I cannot take it to the next level that it needs to go to. So I want to sell it so that somebody else can take this to its natural next level. What that next level is, I'm not sure. Probably, bringing Cup and the bigger series there. But I think it's a great track for the Truck Series, for the Arca Menard Series and stuff like that. Hopefully we'll be able to keep racing there in those series. But to bring Cup in, unless he's able to sell it, I don't see that happening anytime soon as far as an all-star race or anything like that. Because according to the current owner, somebody else needs to come in and invest that money to make it Cup Series eligible.
Well, that's obviously any track's goal if you're in that area. And there's a lot of things that go into it, and I listened to the interview when he called in. I can't remember his name, but with Dave Moody, and it was almost word for word what you said, Chris. I took it to the level I could. Somebody else has to take it to that next level. There are some things in place with. They were part of the state or county, grant money. There you go. Thank you. And I'm sure with that, it would be in hand with NASCAR. I'm not saying it has to be one of the two that buy it, but NASCAR, it would be a package deal of Xfinity and trucks of coming back and being locked in, which they don't have yet. And the owner said he couldn't talk about that. So I get the feeling that would tie in with negotiations to sell the track and NASCAR guaranteeing a truck or partner Xfinity. Now you mentioned ARCA, and that might come into play as well. As well as we've talked about like Charlotte Motor Speedway. They only have the 2 races per year. They need to do other things, whether it be another series of the ASA late model series, get with Kevin Harvick and that group, whatever it be. But there will be you're not going to take it and turn it into a parking lot, warehouse, whatever else. Please. That it will stay a racetrack regardless of who buys it. That was made very clear.
That's good.
And Chris, you put me on the spot. I was like, I guess I wouldn't necessarily argue about a second Michigan race after the way this past weekend went. However, no, you're right. I still wouldn't want to necessarily, especially take away from one that only has one. My opinion, I would rather see 2 races like that at Michigan than one at Talladega or Daytona. But
right.
I still, I think of finding other tracks where they can put a good race on. And I say that, I know, obviously, just talked about that. even 2 cup races per year is not enough to sustain a facility. So, that's a tough call. I mean, I understand that's why a lot of them had 2 dates, was because that was the major chunk of their year in order to sustain. So that's why I'm not a track owner either. One of the reasons, one of many.
Yeah. Obviously, being a track owner in NASCAR, you've got ISC and you have SMI, and right now they're full. Like, they don't have any more dates to create to add races, so they would have to take away from somewhere. And I'm all about creating a rotation, going to some tracks some years and maybe not others. But we're also at a point to where, is New Hampshire still a cup-ready racetrack? Could Rockingham be a replacement for New Hampshire? Has it run its course? Has Dover run its course? Those are 2 tracks. Sonoma, in this land of so many road course races, Sonoma is one of the bottom on the list of entertainment side. So there is room, but whether or not one of these 2 track owners, whether or not they want to get into the business of owning Rockingham, I'm just really not sure. I thought that Rockingham was somehow connected already, or had been connected to SMI, but it was actually North Wilkesboro.
Yeah.
When I did my little research there, so it was North Wilkesboro that was bought to give New Hampshire its second cup date, which is no longer being used. So, I don't really have much more to put into that. Unfortunately, it's probably bad timing for Rockingham. Let's get that 3-day weekend for the trucks, ARCA, and Xfinity. Let's pack out the house. Let's make sure that there's a reason that this track can be owned by one of these major corporations and added to the Cup schedule. If we don't have that first, then I don't think there's going to be any chance at all for them to be added back to a Cup schedule. Though it's a great racetrack, it is, and it's a lot of history. Some people think, though, that East Coast area is already oversaturated, and I would argue that as well.
Yeah, I could see that point for sure. I think, that's why some of these tracks were struggling for a while, is because they were oversaturated in the area.
Well, anyway. And the other is this seating capacity, and I understand that, but that's where I think they need to look at and try again, play around with a midweek Wednesday or Thursday night race, because you only have to draw the 20 to 30,000, I think, as far as capacity. But that might be North Wilkesboro's numbers too. I don't remember, but it's clearly not one of the top ones of 155 like Bristol. So, and it's a relatively local to the shop teams as far as the Charlotte area. So again, a Wednesday or Thursday night midweek race, I think that is something that down the road they've got to look at, especially being that we went through a 28 stretch of no weekends off this year. When they look at the schedule, I think that's something they got to look at.
Yep, I think you're right. I'm getting tired.
Yeah, I see that. So, and I think we covered all of our topics then and caught up on the ones we had missed. So,
yes. So, Chris, you want to start us off with the roundtable?
Oh, yeah, sure. You can follow us at Flag of Caution on TikTok, Flag of Caution on Twitter. It's Chris Creighton, Yellow Caution Flag Creighton. Chris, Yellow Caution Flag Creighton on Facebook. We have multiple pages, but you can find us anywhere. That Why Not Kid, he posts videos from our weekly racing events. Shout out to him. But outside of that, just find us there on one of those main. Oh, we're also on Instagram at Flag of Caution, though I don't ever really get on Instagram. So you can follow us there as well.
Okay, Jay.
And you can follow me on Facebook, Michael Hoosman, Mopar MJ8 on X and Instagram. And Chris, don't forget to hang around here after we shut down, because we got to talk about next week. I'm going to Minnesota, so you need some help.
Yeah, he and I talked a little bit behind the scenes, but we'll talk about that when we do close down. So if you can stay, that would be great. I'm Fan4Racing Sharon. I'm Fan4Racing site on Twitter, Fan4Racing blog and radio on Facebook, and we have the website fan4racing.com. So that's how you can get in touch with me. I'm probably going to be home watching the races this weekend and enjoying the trip to Mexico City vicariously. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed. Watch for our previews coming up later this week. We will have some previews, and we do want to say thank you for watching. We do appreciate you taking the time to tune in and see what we have to say. And we hope you'll come back when we do our previews and our reviews and our interviews. We have a few of those coming up in the coming weeks here as well. So with that, I think we're ready to call it a night, guys.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
See you later. Bye.